Strap yourselves in, we're taking a deep dive into the lore of one of the most iconic real-time strategy franchises ever made, StarCraft. There's a lot to unpack here, so you may want to construct some additional pylons. Before we even get to the first StarCraft game, we have to go way back. The oldest beings in the StarCraft universe are called the Xel'Naga. They are frequently mentioned, but take a while to actually appear.
You are Xel'Naga, the one who called to me. Who are you?
Good question, Sarah. They're basically the great old ones of StarCraft. The Xel'Naga believe the universe follows a cyclical pattern and seek to influence two separate races to become embodiments of two separate virtues: purity of form and purity of essence. Eventually, those races would come together to create a new version of Xel'Naga, and the cycle could begin anew. The Xel'Naga are seen as architects of the universe in a way. They influence other creatures in an attempt to build up their own survival and ideology. They re-enter the story later on, so don't forget about them. The Protoss were the race chosen by the Xel'Naga as a race that best encapsulated purity of form. Their psychic links and excellent physical traits made them a powerful option, and the Xel'Naga eventually came to the Protoss homeworlds to guide them directly. However, the Protoss eventually began to question the Xel'Naga's motivation for helping them, which led to the Xel'Naga leaving their homeworld Aya. With the Xel'Naga no longer guiding them, Protoss advancement slowed, and the different tribes began to resent each other. They soon entered a great civil war called the Aeon of Strife, which was one of the longest and bloodiest conflicts in the history of the universe. The other race chosen by the Xel'Naga, the Zerg, were once an insignificant worm-like species on the hostile planet Xeris. However, multiple factors attracted the Xel'Naga, who saw the race as a perfect example of purity of essence. As the Zerg took control of Xeris with the Xel'Naga's help, the Xel'Naga wanted to avoid the mistakes they felt they made with the Protoss. They created the Overmind, an immortal representation of the Zerg's instincts that always told them exactly what they needed.
We require more Vespene gas.
Soon, infighting broke out among the Xel'Naga themselves, and one named Amon unleashed the Zerg against the other Xel'Naga. As the Zerg assimilated the creatures, they learned how the Xel'Naga had manipulated their species. The Overmind broke free, and led the Zerg swarm to the stars in order to assimilate the entire universe. Finally, we come to the Terrans. In the StarCraft universe, Earth had fallen under a powerful dictatorship called the United Powers League. In an attempt to advance the human race and consolidate their power, the UPL rounded up groups of genetically undesirable humans, put them into cryosleep, and launched them into space. One of those ships arrived at the planet Tarsonis. The people on board this ship began a new society and quickly started spreading to other nearby worlds. This group of humans called themselves the Terran Confederacy. As Terran power grew, rivalries and bad blood began to bubble up. Arcturus Mengsk used his influence and strength to form the Sons of Korhal, who eventually seized control of the Terran government. As the Zerg continued to increase in strength, they faced one serious barrier in dominating the universe. The Swarm had no answer for how to battle with the Protoss' powerful psionic abilities. They needed to find a race to assimilate that had some untapped psychic potential. They found it in the Terrans.
Looks like you mashed some poor fella's dog, Sarge.
It's a Zerglin, Lester. Smaller type of Zerg.
The Zerg descended on the planet of Chal-Sera, attacking and quickly overwhelming the Terrans stationed there. As the threat of the Zerg increased, the Protoss followed close behind and followed their orders: eliminate any world that had been overrun by this threat to the universe. The Protoss obliterated Chal-Sera, though Terran propaganda spun it that the Protoss were the true threat, not the Zerg. All three races were now in direct conflict. When Arcturus Mengsk was still struggling to gain complete control, he sent a strike force to the Terran homeworld of Tarsonis that was led by two soldiers named Jim Raynor and Sarah Kerrigan. While battling with the Confederate forces on the planet, Mengsk set up psi-emitters on the planet's surface to lure the Zerg to the planet. They quickly overran the surface and killed everything in their path. Raynor viewed Mengsk's plan as barbaric, and he and Kerrigan's team struggled to maintain defense against the Protoss that arrived to stop the Zerg, the enemy Confederate forces, and the rampaging Zerg themselves. Raynor defied Mengsk's orders to evacuate the planet, and Kerrigan was trapped by the invading Zerg forces. Despite a rescue attempt, Raynor was unable to find Kerrigan before the planet had to be left to the Zerg. After escaping, he and several troops loyal to him abandoned Mengsk, who further consolidated power by using the battles on Tarsonis to unite the remainder of humanity under his control.
The devastation wrought by the alien invaders is self-evident. We have seen our homes and communities destroyed by the calculated blows of the Protoss.
The Zerg and Protoss both made attempts to seize control of the Argus Stone. a powerful Xel'Naga artifact on the planet Aridus. Raynor led his force of rebels to try to rescue his old partner, while Meng sent his forces who wanted to retrieve the stone. As fighting broke out between the different armies, the Zerg eventually seized control of the Argus stone. Raynor reached Kerrigan, but she emerged from a Zerg chrysalis as a completely changed creature. She was now the Queen of Blades. She began leading the Zerg swarm, decimating the Terran and Protoss. Raynor formed an alliance with the Protoss forces, and the Dark Templar named Zeratul assassinated a powerful Zerg leader. However, this attack accidentally revealed the location of the Protoss homeworld to the Overmind. The Zerg forces gathered to destroy Aya, a battle which resulted in the destruction of the Overmind, severing its control over the rest of the Zerg. With no direct leader, the Zerg split into two factions, one led by Kerrigan, the Queen of Blades. Thus began the Brood War, a civil war between the Zerg swarms. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the United Powers League had been closely monitoring the Terrans. Now known as the United Earth Directorate, the group decided to welcome the Terrans back into the folds of humanity by any means necessary. With the Overmind destroyed, the UED decided to use their so-called mindless Zerg as weapons. They did not realize that several high-level Zerg in the swarm opposing Kerrigan had formed a new Overmind and were simply biding their time. Kerrigan alone knew of the threat that the new Overmind posed. She formed an uneasy alliance with the Protoss and Terrans, went on to betray them, and then convinced Zeratul to kill the second Overmind. At the end of the Brood War, Zeratul discovered something far more sinister than the threat of the Queen of Blades and her Zerg swarm. While returning to the planet Shakuras, Zeratul and his forces picked up a signal from an uncharted moon. On further exploration, they discovered a research facility that was heavily monitored and defended by mercenaries. There, Zeratul discovered several cells housing research subjects, some Zerg, some Protoss. Test Subject 29 was what truly frightened Zeratul, as it was a Protoss-Zerg hybrid. Things were fairly quiet for the years between Brood War and StarCraft 2. Jim Raynor continued to operate as a mercenary leader above his ship, the Hyperion. Soon, he was approached by an old friend, Tychus Finley, an ex-con who brought Raynor an important contract.
Mr. Findlay, your freedom awaits.
Hell, it's about time.
The two set out to liberate several alien artifacts to send to Finley's employer, the Mobius Foundation. Soon, Finley and Raynor's second-in-command, Matt Horner, learned more about the Queen of Blades and her past relationship with Raynor, when she was still Sarah Kerrigan. It wasn't long before Raynor was contacted by an old friend, Zeratul, who came bearing a warning for his friend. Zeratul let Raynor see his memories. He learned that Zeratul had been hunting down the Protoss-Zerg hybrids, but he was worried that he wouldn't be able to stop them alone. He had also encountered Kerrigan again, who feared the same threat. In forging a psychic connection with the Overmind spirit, Zeratul learned that it had been manipulated during the previous war, and that it had actually been fighting back against the Dark Voice by creating the Queen of Blades. She alone could save the Zerg from extinction. After using the collected pieces of the Xel'Naga artifact to partially revert Kerrigan to her old self, Raynor and Finley went to retrieve Kerrigan from the Zerg hive. There, Finley revealed that he had been working with Arcturus Mengs all along. He was tasked with assassinating Kerrigan to earn a pardon.
I made a deal with the devil, Jimmy. She dies, I go free.
Raynor killed Finley and rescued Kerrigan from the Zerg hive. She was still controlling the Zerg, but her de-infestation had partially halted the swarm's attacks. Kerrigan started adjusting to her new reality. She was essentially human again, but still had control over Zerg forces. She also could not escape her old nemesis, Arcturus Mengs. She started recruiting more Zerg troops to her side to protect her and to rescue Raynor, who had been captured by Mengs. Kerrigan struck out against the Dominion and Mengs, winning several victories before encountering Zeratul again. Despite initial hostility, Zeratul revealed the prophecy he had discovered. He showed Kerrigan that she needed to become a Primal Zerg on the Zerg homeworld to save the universe. Kerrigan returned to Xeris in the first spawning pit, where the Zerg race lived before interference by the Xel'Naga. She was reborn more powerful than ever, quickly bending the remaining Zerg to her will. She then set out to rescue Raynor and confront her old foe, Arcturus Mengs. Kerrigan worked with Raynor's second-in-command, Matt Horner, to locate their old friend. Although their rescue attempt was ultimately successful, Raynor abandoned Kerrigan after seeing she had reinfested herself. Kerrigan encountered a Xel'Naga named Narud, who had previously been disguised as a Terran soldier and had been working to resurrect the Xel'Naga Amon. Kerrigan eventually battled and killed Narud, learning of Amon's ultimate plan to conquer the universe with the Protoss-Zerg hybrids. Kerrigan moved against Mengs and most likely would have lost if not for the timely intervention of Jim Raynor. She eventually killed her nemesis, losing millions of Zerg in the process. There was no time to celebrate, however, as the final battle with Amon still loomed. She started to rebuild her forces to face this ultimate threat. Zeratul returned to the Protoss homeworld of Aya to learn more of the threat of Amon. However, he was a bit too late. By the time he arrived, Amon had already returned to the universe and taken control of the Protoss Zerg hybrids. Zeratul fought through several Zerg hives and some crazed Protoss, who were being controlled by Amon. He soon encountered Artanis, another powerful Protoss leader. The two battled, and Zeratul learned that the psychic link of the Protoss was what allowed Amon to control them.
Your nerve cords chain you to his will. They must be removed.
He severed Artanis' link, but Artanis landed a killing blow on Zeratul at the exact same moment. Dying, Zeratul explained the threat of Amon to the Protoss warrior. Artanis mourned what he had done, and vowed to carry on Zeratul's mission to stop Amon from conquering the universe. Artanis began to unite the warring Protoss tribes, severing their psychic links and revealing that they were being controlled by the ancient Amon. He joined forces with Raynor and Kerrigan, who he had learned had been working with Zeratul to stop Amon's rise to power. Trust was tough to come by between these allies, especially considering that Artanis had killed Zeratul. However, exploring an ancient temple allowed Kerrigan and Artanis to learn that they had long ago been foretold to stop Amon's threat to the universe.
Amon is transforming our people into a host form.
Meanwhile, Amon had taken control of the powerful Protoss fleet, the Golden Armada, to begin destroying entire planets. Artanis and his allies realized that they could wait no longer. They had to stop Amon now before it was too late. They moved to sabotage Amon's continued production of hybrids and to destroy the Xel'Naga once and for all. They used the ancient artifacts to destroy Amon's physical body, but they knew that wouldn't end the threat. Amon still existed within the Void, an astral plane that was at the time connected and separate from the universe.
I now see my true enemy. He waits for me in the void.
Kerrigan and her Protoss allies opened a portal so they could send a fleet into the Void and destroy Amon for good. Several Protoss channeled their energy to allow Kerrigan herself to become a Xel'Naga. Only then would she be strong enough to defeat Amon. As Amon attempted to manipulate their allied forces against one another, Kerrigan destroyed his support and took the fight directly to him. Amon attempted to confuse Kerrigan, claiming she was actually doing his bidding by defeating him. She wasn't buying it though, and killed Amon with a powerful psychic blast. She led her allies out of the Void and back to their universe, now safe from the threat of Amon. After the downfall of Amon, peace gradually returned to the universe. With Arcturus dead, Valerian Mengs took over as Emperor of the Terran Dominion. His forces were led by Matt Horner, who had previously served with Raynor's raiders. Raynor himself was last seen in Joey Ray's bar on Mars Sera, the original hub of Raynor's raiders at the start of StarCraft 2. He was last seen leaving the bar with Sarah Kerrigan, who had returned to a completely human form, or at least was able to manifest herself that way. Zagara, Kerrigan's former second-in-command, now controlled the Zerg swarm on Char. They were not expanding out further and helped to maintain the peace. The Protoss were not united under singular rule, but they were not at war with one another either. With the threat of Amon gone and the constant warfare at a standstill, the universe of StarCraft was finally at peace, at least until Blizzard decides to release StarCraft 3. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more SVG videos about your favorite games are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.